Welcome, everyone. It's so fantastic to welcome you to Leaders Lab episode 2 after a very successful first episode. So glad to have us all with us. My name is Marika. I head of the events team at the Customer Success Network, the community that sits behind that amazing format. And we're so lucky to be partnering with Emilia, who's founder and CEO of Growth Molecules, a boutique consultancy in the customer success space. I'll hand you over to Emilia and her guest in just a second. They have a super exciting discussion for you. Just before we jump into there, a couple of housekeeping items for me. To ask your questions and to vote other attendees' questions, please head up to the Slido link that we have put on the screen in front of you. Alternatively, if you have the Slido app and you can just use the code is below there as well. Using Slido, you can ask questions and also upvote other people's questions so that we can, when we get to that point at the end, we know exactly what to ask so that we give you the most value. Last but not least, please do stay with us until the end. We have a very exciting piece of news for you. On our third episode, we have actually a couple of speakers, one from the UK, Emilia, and one from the US. So that is going to be fantastically exciting. That's it for me. Emilia and Sandy, thank you so much for joining us today. Over to you.
All right, thank you so much. And thanks for everyone who's joining us today. I'm going to stop sharing in a moment, but I'd like to start by welcoming Sandy Uwimana. I hope I said that well. And Sandy, thank you for being with us. For those of you who are wondering, who is Sandy? You're going to find out. And she has so much to share, especially while we're leading teams in a pandemic and bringing new people on during growth for her company, all remotely. So it's really interesting. And I can't wait for Sandy to share some of her expertise with all of us. So Sandy, first, tell us who you are. What do you do?
Yes, thank you so much, Emilia, and really excited to virtually meet and connect with everyone. So like Emilia said, my name is Sandy Uwimana. I'm the Director of Customer Success at Buoy Health. Buoy Health is a US-based healthcare technology company. The product that we deliver is an AI-driven healthcare navigation platform that essentially helps employers direct and support their employees as they understand which benefits are appropriate for them, especially when they're feeling symptomatic, but in general, just improving the navigation space in healthcare. I've been with the company for 3 years. We're a post-Series C startup, so we're still pretty small, just under 100 people. But in the 3 years, the company has grown actually more than I can very quickly quantify. I think over 5 to 6 times the amount than when I started. So it's been pretty amazing just to see that amount of growth since I've been here. I don't know if Emilia, you want me to give like a quick fun fact about myself. I think sometimes that can
I do.
that can be kind of fun when we're all virtual. When I'm not doing customer success, I actually previously was a singer. I've sung actually most of my life. I've sung in college. I've recorded. So it's something that I find to be really fun, but also just a great way to stress relieve. And I think finding the ways that we all kind of get space to let out emotion, but also just experience some joy during the pandemic, I think is super important. So I do singing and I sing for that when I'm not leading the team.
Wow, I'm so glad you shared that fun fact. I'll share a couple related to this. This morning, I spoke at Customer Fest about renewals starting at the kickoff. Mm-hmm. And the woman who introduced me sang. She got everyone to stand up and did a little singing for all of us while we were getting in touch and stretching before then I went into my presentation. And I thought, wow, more people need to sing. And then I was checking the news, and Dolly Parton got her pandemic shot, and she sang to the doctor before she got her shot. So incredibly powerful to bring people together and to calm stress, like you mentioned. I am not a singer, so I appreciate that you are. All right. Well, good. Let's get started. Let's put it out there for the audience why we're all here. why should customer success own the renewals?
Yeah. I was excited to talk about this topic with you, Emilia, because even as I've been thinking about how my team approaches this, I mean, this is such a polarizing topic in general. And how I want to frame my response is really one, thinking always about what's ultimately driving the most value for the customer, which team is best prepared and poised to own renewals and expansions, but then also thinking about what stage of a company and product you're in. I think it's important to keep both of those lenses together because different companies in different stages, you may find that you're finding value by separating from the renewal. But ultimately, when we were thinking about this for the Buoy team, we're a small team, we're working with our customers day in, day out. It only made sense that we work with them for subsequent renewals, subsequent expansions, because we know them best. So when thinking about why we should own the renewal, I actually wanted to put this in like three kind of key points to make this kind of tactical. One, we're working with our customers and really understanding their key strategies. And I think anyone who's on this call, you probably had some type of a strategic change in 2020. You probably had to do some type of a pivot either within your own organization or you realized your customers had to do some type of a pivot. And I realized that we need to be able to very quickly frame up our renewals and any expansions within the client's current strategy, which means you have to really understand the strategy as it develops. The customer success team has a much more direct relationship day in, day out with this client. And why wait to bring in sales who hasn't been in contact with them for a year plus to restart a conversation when it only feels natural to really discuss the future with someone they already know, trust, and have worked with as their strategies have pivoted. So I think strategic importance and the quick fluctuation of strategy really lends itself to having the CS team own the renewal. I think there's also an importance of accountability. So for a company like ours, we understand that we want to make sure that we're really driving value to the customer. If you are helping the customer achieve the goals that they set out with you from the beginning, and they are achieving that, then a renewal and expansion really feels like the next natural step. They're seeing the value, they want to continue working with you, potentially even invest more. Our team should be held accountable to driving further relationships because we're the ones who are working with these customers and helping them see the full value of the product. So I think it's important to tie in the work that we do day to day to how they're long-term impacting the company and having them really tie that back to a renewal. So I think accountability is really kind of important as a part of this as to why CS should own the renewal. And then lastly, I think going back to what ultimately drives the most value for your customer, this really ties back into how quickly strategies change and the fact that the CS team has the best relationship. I think it's important for your customer to know that you're thinking about their development long term and that if they've been working with me for months and I'm coming to them and saying, here's where we're at, here's a either new product or here's what a renewal looks like for you, they know that I'm coming with the full context of the relationship. And I think that that breeds a different level of trust that lends itself to a better relationship moving forward. So I put a lot there.
I
But
think
I
that's
really,
great.
yeah.
Yes, so I think you summed it up really nicely. Although, however, I have to say many people that I've interviewed in my career for customer success roles coming from sales, I've
Mhm.
asked them, why do you want to leave sales? And they've said, well, it's a grind, it's a lot of stress, it's a lot of pressure. I don't want to do that job anymore. I think that's probably the wrong answer to give your interviewer, given customer success is always selling. Anyone in a
Mhm.
organization is selling in one way or another, whether it's direct or not. So I'm curious, how do you prepare people to be in a sales function when they're in customer success? Because
Yeah.
renewals, expansions, those are sales roles. And during the pandemic, I'm assuming it became a lot harder.
Yeah. So I think about this in a couple of different ways. So like, I'll be like pretty honest and vulnerable. Like, there's definitely a part of me early on that was like, I don't know if I want my team to be carrying this like financial, not even burden, but the financial responsibility long term. How is that going to take away from the way that we're focusing on clients in terms of retention and like driving value? But what really changed my mind ultimately is that, one, I agree with you, Emilia. We're always selling. So the idea that sales ends at the point of sale, I think that's something that the customer success field really should have. It should be illustrating that's not true. Even when you're in the process of retaining a customer, you're selling them on your vision. You're selling them on your long-term plan for them. You're selling them on the value of your product. So we're all part of sales, and we should really be owning that. In terms of taking on the kind of financial responsibility, the way that I phrased it to my team before we even get into how I've prepared them, the way that I phrased it is that we ultimately want to be helping a customer continue to reach their goals, and a new sale slash a renewal is going to be the way to do that. I'm not incentivizing my team to be going after sales numbers that feel like they're like pushing them to either compromise the quality of the service that they're giving to their client. I'm not pushing them to put on like a fake air with their customers. You really should be doing a service to your customers by bringing this new opportunity to them. And even that small phrasing change where we're saying, like, you're not just here carrying a quota, but really you're thinking about this customer came to you and started a relationship. How are you maintaining, keeping, and when it's appropriate, growing that relationship? I think that change, one, makes this more customer centric, but it also means that it's less of like I'm hunting after a number. I think that's the sentiment that I always want to combat against. We're not hunting after a number, we're really hunting for value. And that like small change I think is important.
And I know you're going to say your
Yeah.
next part, how are you enabling them? But I will say I really agree with that. And Bill Couchard runs the Helping Sales podcast. And I just love that phrase, helping sales. And it sounds like that mind shift that you're talking about is all about how your customer success managers are helping their clients results in that natural sale. And I like
Exactly.
how you phrased it around that mind shift.
Yeah, I think it's always important to put this back on how is this really helping to improve and drive the customer forward, as opposed to just focusing on the number that is internal to your company. Because ultimately, if we're looking to push forward and help our customers, then the strategies that we take to get there, they feel more worthwhile, they feel more natural, and it feels less like you're kind of on the grind, like you said before. Uh,
So
in
how are you enabling them? How do
yeah.
you help them really learn this technique or skill that salespeople are constantly being given education? They have
Mhm,
sales enablement, they have SKO. How are
mhm.
you enabling your team?
Yeah, so we're still, again, like a pretty small team. So one of the things that I've been focusing on is really building out this apprenticeship model. And I'll use like a renewal as an example. When I bring someone new onto the team and they're just starting to get up to speed with how we run things at Buoy, I have them, even as they start to get accounts, I have them closely work with me on a renewal. So being able to watch and learn and grow as I am walking through a renewal, and then I'm there to help them support in their first renewal so that as they learn kind of what are the key conversations you're having? How do you understand when to bring this up? Some of those things, one, you can learn more in like a more school fashioned way through trainings. But I found that the apprenticeship model is actually really helpful for getting people to start doing the work and watching the work. Um, Secondly, we do have the CS team actually taking part in some sales trainings. So that's something that we're trying out for this year. I found it to be really helpful, just getting people to start thinking about the types of questions they should be asking, the way that they should be presenting information, even learning about things such as the extent of memory and how long people remember kind of key attributes of your product and how you should be thinking of including that in a presentation. Those are all things, one, we can use on the CS side, but two, it helps them feel more comfortable as they go into that first renewal or expansion conversation. And then lastly, we do have, it's kind of like a buddy system, but it's in the sense that if we are having issues with a renewal or an expansion, like we're really all working to make sure that the customer is successful. So if we need sales support, we pull in sales, but we know that we're ultimately the team that's driving that conversation. Sales may be coming in to help tackle a question or provide some more expertise, but we're ultimately in the driver's seat for that. So I'd say those three things are kind of key places where we've started to build.
That's wonderful. I will agree that the sales training and practicing is critical. They say that everything you're hearing and learning today on this webinar, you'll forget in 30 days or about 95% of it. But if you practice, you do role plays, you're far more likely to remember it. And then lastly, why would you try something new on a customer for the first time when you can role play, you can shadow, you can do this apprentice strategy that you're talking about? I just absolutely love that idea. Well, good.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I know we have some questions coming in. Marika, I don't know if we should take them right now, if you want to chime in, but I'm happy to take some questions as I see them coming in.
Sure thing. Let me share my screen because we have a couple of those. Oh, my apologies. Pulling that.
And I know we have one in the chat as well if we want to take some there too.
There we go. Okay, should we start with the upvoted ones?
Sure.
Cool. Well, the first one that we have here is around stress points in CSM zoning renewal. What are the stress points that you've seen with CSM zoning renewals, and do we have any ideas to resolve them?
Yeah. I'm happy to answer just some stress points that we've seen. I think one of them is kind of going back to this like apprenticeship question. This may be ultimately new for the CSM, right? So they may not know, one, the structure of a renewal. They may not understand how to negotiate even like price points. There's a lot that can be involved financially in the renewal. So ways that we've looked to resolve that is, one, ensuring that the CSM has appropriate support in navigating this. So even if someone's new, like really, one, being able to break down, here is the company's policy around how we think about like pricing negotiations, and here's how we can support you in that process. I'll even do like practice sessions with my team so that they feel comfortable thinking about even like objection handling and working through that together. For certain deals, we'll even bring in like a more senior member to help support the renewal on the CS side. So not necessarily just pulling in sales, but pulling in another more senior member of my team to support that conversation, just so that people are getting more comfortable with that. I think there's also just getting comfortable with the process itself in terms of like technology. We use Salesforce for managing renewals, and I think sometimes people can be like, I'm not used to using Salesforce in this way. What are the different steps that I have to follow? So one of this is just training, but two, just making it really easy for someone to know, even like with a checklist or some type of process to follow, to know here's everything you need to do to seal the deal with this renewal, and here are the assets that you can use to help prepare you. So making that really easy to pick up. But I'll pause here.
Yeah, so it sounds like what you're doing is building customer enablement for your team, and I really like that idea. Do you have, and I know someone's asked a question around this, do you have comp structure that incentivizes your team? And this is another sticky a topic when it comes to owning renewals and customer success. I'm currently acting as a VP 2 days a week for a client, and they don't have a comp structure to incentivize the CSMs to get those renewals and expansions in. And I have different feelings about it. So I'd love to hear yours and how you're incentivizing your team.
Yeah. So I'd also love to hear, Emilia, what your thoughts are after I chat. We're actually like right in the middle of this. So again, we're still a pretty early stage company. So we're just getting to the point now where we're thinking about comp, we're thinking about kind of how bonuses are tied to this or even commission structures. Um, for this year, what we're really doing is setting the foundation by using our OKRs and goals to be tied to renewal targets and having that be a way of one, incentivizing through our goal structure for people to be going after and appropriately receiving those renewals. But we still understand that there's a lot of combinations of people's performance outside of just renewals that should come into comp. So this year is really all about level setting and creating the foundation where for the time being, bonuses are tied to how you're achieving your goals. Renewals are part of those goals, but it's not just your renewals. And we're level setting to see how that works for the team. And then in subsequent years, we're really saying like, okay, if we put a comp structure in this year, what would that have looked like? And using the performance of this year to understand that. And then next year, starting to gradually pull in this commission structure. So I think it's important to not very quickly, especially if your team has never been comped before on something like renewals. I think it's important to not quickly rotate, but instead to like show them the path so that they're incentivized from their goals initially that may be tied to a bonus and then slowly building in more of this commission structure so that you're still maintaining the trust of your team. But Emilia, I'd love to hear.
Yeah.
I think that that's something that's important.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And I would agree, just putting something out there without, once again, I'll use the word customer success enablement, is going to set you and your team up for failure. I've been in organizations where they announced your salary structure is now 60% base, 40% commission and bonus based on your renewals and upsells. Yet this team had not been trained yet. And I saw over the course of the 2 months that I was working with them on the training, many people leave the organization because they felt the training was too late. You can't roll out these type of incentives and then say, okay, fine, now we'll give you training, because the team is in the thick of these renewals on a regular cadence. So you do need to set them up for success in advance. I've seen the most successful organizations with comp structures where it's 80% base and 20% bonus, and then incentives if you overachieve. So the companies that I've worked with where they were really successful, the majority of the team was either achieving their goals or overachieving because they were so incentivized and enabled. And it wasn't something they rolled out immediately, but those type of incentives, at the end of the day, we're human beings. We want to help our clients, but of course, money will incentivize you to hit that extra goal. And I've seen it. I'm working with an organization without those incentives, yet they have OKRs. And I've worked with many companies with incentives, and the ones with incentives are doing better. So I highly recommend them. And someone had asked a question, should it be based on revenue, net revenue retention, or other things? Of course, you should add other things if it's relevant to your organization. So an example is one of the clients I worked with really needed more case studies around a certain use case. And so we incentivized the team that quarter for whoever could get the most. We gamified it. It went into their bonus structure. You can also do it by team to lift the teams or the pods up. And I really like that structure too.
Yeah, I love that idea, Emilia. I think that's I think being able to be nimble with the ways that you're incentivizing your team makes a ton of sense, especially since we recognize that our clients may need different things at different points. So we want to make sure that we're maintaining visibility into that. I think that's just like totally spot on. The one thing that I would just add is that if you're like for a company like ours, my team is working with clients, but they're also helping to like build up a lot of like the CS function because we're building this team from the ground up. So there's a lot of like internal project work. There's a lot of just like strategic thinking that each member of my team is responsible for. And I believe that in order to one, incentivize your team on the client facing work, but still maintain a strong relationship with them, you have to put both things in perspective. You can't lose track of all of the internal work that they're doing. That has to be combined. Otherwise, it makes people feel like the work that they're doing isn't being appropriately recognized. So I would just don't lose track of where your team is maintaining focus and what they have to do for your company. We should make sure everyone's being compensated for all of the work that they're doing.
Yes, I agree. And I know we're running out of time. I see two really important questions related to what we're talking about that we may want to give answers to. One of them is around procurement. Do we bring sales back in around procurement? And Sandy, I don't know about you, but for the companies I've worked with, anytime procurement is involved, they are incentivized to bring your costs down. So you better be training your customer success team on how to address and handle procurement teams because their whole goal is to bring your price down. And so if you want to bring in sales, if you're not confident, but if you have to bring in sales, I don't believe you're training your team well enough to handle those conversations. But I would love to get your feedback as well.
Yeah, I definitely think that a lot of this does go back, like you said, Emilia, to that customer success enablement. So I think you have to make sure that your team is appropriately ready to do that type of negotiation. If you are still building up this function and you know that you have a sales team that is like working more directly with procurement, then I can see the benefit of doing that initially. But I ultimately do think it's honestly really helpful for the CS team to understand when they're working with their stakeholders, like their stakeholders may have questions around like, how did we get here? How was this renewal completed? Like, what were the incentives put in front of them? If you don't have that backstory, I think that makes it more difficult for you to answer those questions post the point of renewal. I know that when I've done renewals in the past, there have been instances where customers have asked me specific questions about that renewal, and it was very helpful for me to be able, because I was the one who ran it, to respond. So I would say that I think ensure that your teams are ready for that type of negotiation. I think it makes sense for customer success to own that and to run with it. But as always, you're working with a team. So if you need to bring in sales, but ensure that customer success doesn't lose track of everything that's been agreed to and discussed there.
Sandy, thank you so much for your time. We've sadly run out of time. I feel like this could have been an hour session, but what I'm going to do is quickly, before everyone leaves us, to start and for others finish their days. Next month, we are going to be talking about your Tech Touch digital strategy with Chad Horenfeld from Customer. He's a fellow Canadian. And then Vincent Goury, who is from SAP, and he has created an incredible Tech Touch strategy that we'd love to share with all of you. So this coming month will be a little bit different as we have two guests joining us. Marika, I'll give it back to you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, ladies. I know that I myself was so taken by your conversation. Some fantastic bits and pieces that I'm already thinking about implementing with my team. To everyone who joined us, thank you so much. The link for registration, as you've already seen, is in the chat box. I'm looking forward to welcoming you all back next month. Until then, I hope you'll have a fantastic rest of your week.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.